And so what are some of the things that the whites says about black people when they think you're white?
Like the N-word.
They call them the N-word?
I have definitely heard the N-word used by white people when they don't think there are any black people in the room. Yes, I have.
And when you heard that word, did it affect you?
I mean, I was utterly offended by it, and I spoke up.
But they didn't know you were black. So let me just get it out of the way. Are you black or white?
I am black. Both my parents are black. All 4 of my grandparents are black. And my family has been in this country for nearly 400 years. I'm just light-skinned.
Whoa. Did y'all have a white mailman?
No, there was none of that going on.
That's amazing. And do you pass for white? Have you ever passed for white?
I have never tried to pass for white. There are plenty of times that people mistakenly think that I'm white, but I've never passed for white. I have no desire to pass for white.
Are your parents dark black or light-skinned black?
Both my parents are light. I'm originally from California. I'm a 3rd-generation Californian. My grandpa was born in LA as well, but both my parents are light-skinned. They're maybe they look a little dark. They'll probably tan better than me. My mother definitely doesn't look like a white person, but they're not. My parents are not that dark.
That's amazing. You even sound white. That's amazing. What inspired you to write the book Race Rules? What your black friend won't tell you.
Around 5 years ago, I was watching the news, and it was another one of those stories of a Karen going viral for calling the police for no reason. And as I watched this news story, I started to think of several things. I thought about the repetitive questions, rinse and repeat questions that I get from people in my personal and professional life around race. I thought about the diversity consulting work that I do, and again, a lot of repetitive questions. And I thought about the things that white people say around me when they don't realize I'm black. And I started thinking about behavior and how people engage. I was like, oh, white people need a manual. So I started writing this book. Amazing. So it's a manual.
And so do you get white privilege just because you look so white and you sound white, you act white? Do you have white privilege?
I don't think I get 100% of white privilege. I would say I get some light skin privilege, but I've definitely been discriminated against and heard all kinds of terrible things about people of color and about me. I've definitely experienced discrimination, but there are a lot of times that people make assumptions about me because they don't know what race I am, or they assume things like you're saying, the way that I speak, or the fact that I went to Wellesley College, got my master's at Harvard University, got my law degree from Columbia Law School.
And so did you receive all those opportunities because of affirmative action, or did you earn your way?
I think if somebody gets an opportunity because of affirmative action, they have earned their way.
What do you mean by that?
So, because there's also de facto white privilege and white affirmative action. If you look at a school like Harvard or Columbia or any of these schools, there are a whole bunch of white people that go to those schools who don't deserve to be there. And they're there because their family either bought a building or they're a legacy person that's been there generation after generation. But affirmative action is not about lowering the bar. It's about opening the door to people who are qualified.
But most blacks get into those white universities because they have lowered the standard. Because the blacks can't pass the SAT test and all the things they have to do. And so the whites have lowered the standards to let them in. Is that right? Is that fair?
It's not lowering the standards. It's about looking at the totality of the package of the person. But like I said, I have been in classes with people who are white, and I've been like, this person is dumb as rocks. How did they get here? And then I start figuring it out. Because their family has been at this school for generation after generation, and that is why I'm surrounded by white mediocrity.
In black universities, I know a lot of black kids over the years who have gone to black colleges, and they were able to get in because they knew someone who either graduated from that college, or their family member went there, or someone who donates. So they refer them to those schools, that kind of normal. I think all aspects of business, even when I get employees, a lot of times it's because someone referred them.
You know, referral, there are plenty of times that there are referrals, but getting into an institution of higher learning because you bought your way in or you're a legacy is not appropriate. I mean, look at somebody like Jared Kushner, who went to Harvard. He would have not gotten in on the merit. He only got in because his father donated like $2 million for him to go there. And I think his brother as well.
Nice.
That's not appropriate. But getting back to your question, Jesse, about lowering the bar, I think that's a misnomer. I mean, people are not less qualified when affirmative action helps them get into an institution.
Then why do the blacks, they call white people standard white? And they say, well, white people work too hard. White people want to be on time. White people earn their way. This thing is white. You got to lower it and let me in. If the blacks are capable of doing it on their own, or can come up to the standard of the whites, why do they whine and they want the whites to lower everything so they can get in?
I don't think that's about lowering, but in terms of punctuality, I am chronically punctual.
Yeah, because I think you're white.
But in terms of lowering the standard, I mean, I just fundamentally disagree with that as a premise, because it's really about providing opportunity when doors have been historically and systemically closed to people over time that created an environment where only white people get to excel. And so what affirmative action is about is just leveling the playing field, making sure that you have a diverse pool of people to gain access and opportunity, right? So something like the SATs, what it is more of a predictor of is what is your socioeconomic background. Not necessarily your intelligence, your grit, how hard you can work, whether or not you're capable of excelling in an academic or professional environment.
Well, what's wrong with the blacks is in that their representatives are always wanting reparations and affirmative action and some type of program, rather than the blacks thinking and being individuals and just doing their own thing. The way you say you have done, and your grandfather was like that. My grandfather was the same way, and he taught me to be on time, to work, and to just do my thing, and not rely on anyone else to do it for me, not to lower any standards, just do my own thing. What's wrong with the blacks? That they always want a reparation, or they want something, rather than just doing their thing.
Part of what your analysis is, Jesse, is that somehow we're going to be able to solve racism and systemic and structural barriers on an individual basis. And that is never going to happen. So you need to have some kind of policy and initiative that's trying to counter what is inherent discrimination built into the system. And the inherent discrimination creates a society where the opportunity is significantly leaning towards only white achievement.
So are you saying that the blacks are never going to get better then? They're going to always be this way?
I'm not saying it's going to always be this way, but we have to...
No, I mean, are the blacks going to always be victims and on the totem pole? Are you saying because of the white won't change, the blacks are always going to be a problem?
Why is it that the blacks are a problem as opposed to the structure that promotes exclusive white achievement as being the problem?
Well, I mean, as far as blaming and begging and wanting programs and whining.
Let's break down programs, okay? So if you want to talk about how there's been achievement and success in this country, it really goes back to how policies and laws have been implemented and instituted in this country. So you can say, okay, we had slavery, which created like free labor, unpaid labor. But then getting to some programs, then you had the Homestead Act, which was in the 1800s, went all the way, the last land grant was in the 1980s, and that enabled whites to get a whole bunch of free land, a program.
And if those things are true, why was it, when those things was happening, if they happened, that the blacks were doing better then than they are today? Because back then, blacks were not begging, they were not blaming, they had a sense of respect about themselves.
I disagree with you, Jesse, that black people have a sense of disrespect about themselves right now. I think a lot of these
things... They're not too proud to beg.
And if you look at the begging, if we're going to say that programs equal begging, then it says, what is the Homestead Act? What is the GI Bill? What is the New Deal? What are these tax, policies that basically enable white people to have more opportunity and wealth than they're entitled to.
Oh, speaking of that, because you do look white, and I read that sometimes you're around white people, they don't know you're black.
I mean, I can't avoid them.
That's right. And so what are some of the things that the whites says about black people when they think you're white?
Like the N-word.
They call them the N-word?
I have definitely heard the N-word used by white people when they don't think there are any black people in the room. Yes, I have.
And when you heard that word, did it affect you?
I mean, I was utterly offended by it, and I spoke up.
But they didn't know you were black. You know how the blacks put when they own a black business, they put black business owner or owned by black business? Maybe you should put a sign on that says, I'm black.